What if I told you that a teenage immigrant who once depended on food stamps would one day create an app used by billions of people around the world? And what if I told you that the very company that once rejected him would later pay $19 billion to acquire his creation? This is the remarkable story of Koum, the founder of WhatsApp, a story of poverty, perseverance, rejection, and the extraordinary power of never giving up. Our story begins in 1976 in a small village near Kyiv, Ukraine. Koum was born into a modest family during a time when Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union. Life was far from comfortable. Opportunities were limited, resources were scarce, and the future often seemed uncertain. The family struggled financially. Their home lacked many of the conveniences that people in other parts of the world took for granted. Even something as common as a telephone was considered a luxury. As Jan grew older, his parents became increasingly concerned about the limited opportunities available to him. Like many parents, they dreamed of a better future for their child. That dream led to a life-changing decision. In 1992, when Jan was just 16 years old, he and his mother left their homeland and immigrated to the United States in search of a better life. But America was not the land of instant success they had imagined. The family arrived with very little money and settled in a small apartment in Mountain View, California. To survive, they relied on government assistance and food stamps. Jan's mother worked hard to support the family, but life remained difficult. The young Jan found himself in a completely unfamiliar world, a new country, a new language, a new culture. He often felt like an outsider. Yet amid these struggles, he discovered something that would change the course of his life forever: computers. Fascinated by technology, Jan began teaching himself computer networking and programming. He spent countless hours reading manuals and studying technical books borrowed from libraries. He had no prestigious teachers, no expensive training programs, no wealthy investors backing him. Only curiosity, determination, and an eagerness to learn. Slowly, his efforts began to bear fruit. In 1997, Jan secured a job as an infrastructure engineer at Yahoo, one of the most influential internet companies of that era. For many people, this would have been the realization of a dream. For Jan, it was only the beginning. At Yahoo, he met another talented engineer named Brian Acton. The two became close friends and spent years working together. Neither of them knew that one day they would build something that would transform global communication. As the years passed, Jan gained valuable experience and deep technical knowledge. But life also brought heartbreak. His mother, who had sacrificed so much to bring him to America, was diagnosed with cancer. Even while battling illness, she continued encouraging her son to pursue his dreams. In the year 2000, she passed away. The loss deeply affected Jan. Yet he carried forward the values she had instilled in him: hard work, humility, resilience, and perseverance. By 2007, both Koum and Brian Acton decided to leave Yahoo and explore new opportunities. But the next chapter began with disappointment. They applied for jobs at several technology companies. One of those companies was Facebook. Both Jan and Brian were rejected. For many people, such rejection might have felt like a crushing defeat. For them, it became motivation. Sometimes life's greatest setbacks become the starting point of its greatest opportunities. In 2009, Jan purchased an iPhone and became fascinated by the rapidly growing world of mobile applications. As he observed how people communicated, he noticed a problem. Text messaging was expensive. International communication was often inconvenient. People needed a simpler, faster, and more reliable way to stay connected. An idea began to take shape. Jan wanted to build an application that would allow people to communicate easily, privately, and seamlessly across the world. He named it WhatsApp, a clever play on the phrase, "What's up?" The journey, however, was far from smooth. The early versions of WhatsApp crashed frequently. Users complained. Technical challenges seemed endless. At times, Jan became so frustrated that he considered abandoning the project altogether. But Brian Acton encouraged him to keep going. Together, they continued refining the product. One update at a time. One problem at a time. One user at a time. Gradually, people began to appreciate WhatsApp's simplicity. There were no flashy advertisements, no unnecessary distractions, just a simple and effective way to communicate. And that simplicity became its greatest strength. Word spread rapidly. Friends invited friends. Families used it to stay connected across countries. Businesses began adopting it for communication. The user base grew at an astonishing pace. Within just a few years, WhatsApp had attracted hundreds of millions of users around the world. Then came a moment that stunned the entire technology industry. In 2014, Facebook, the same company that had once rejected Koum and Brian Acton, acquired WhatsApp for approximately $19 billion. It was one of the largest technology acquisitions in history. The teenage immigrant who had once relied on food stamps had become a billionaire. But perhaps the most emotional moment came shortly after the acquisition. Jan signed the WhatsApp deal near the welfare office, where he and his mother had once collected food assistance. It was his quiet tribute to the woman whose sacrifices had made his journey possible. A reminder of how far they had come. So, what can we learn from Jan Koum's extraordinary story? First, your beginnings do not determine your destiny. Second, rejection is not the end of the road. Sometimes it is simply a redirection towards something greater. Third, knowledge and skills can become your greatest assets, even when money is scarce. And finally, lasting success often comes to those who solve real problems with patience, persistence, and unwavering determination. The next time life places obstacles in your path, remember Jan Koum, a young immigrant who arrived in America with almost nothing and went on to change the way billions of people communicate. His journey reminds us that extraordinary achievements often begin with ordinary people who refuse to quit. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Nuti Stories for more inspiring journeys of courage, perseverance, wisdom, and success.